They said trucks never lose value. They said demand would never fall. They said America would always love its pickups. But they were wrong. Right now, across the United States, thousands of brand new pickup trucks are sitting motionless under the sun, perfectly polished, perfectly useless. Parking lots the size of football fields are filled with unsold inventory, silent monuments to a market that went too far, too fast. For the first time in decades, dealers are begging customers to buy, and the once untouchable pickup industry is on the verge of a historic collapse. Over the past 10 years, the price of a new pickup truck in America has soared by more than 60%. In 2015, an average working man could drive home a reliable truck for $38,000. Today, that same model costs over $61,000, sometimes more than his entire annual salary. Manufacturers told us it was inflation, technology, luxury. But the truth runs deeper: greed, overproduction, and a dangerous faith that the demand for trucks would never end. Behind closed doors, automakers are panicking. Internal memos reveal that by mid-2026, current prices will be impossible to sustain. New, cheaper models are being rushed into development. Stripped-down versions of once premium trucks priced 20 to 30% lower. They know what's coming. They just don't want you to know. Meanwhile, the public is waking up. The internet is filled with stories of buyers losing tens of thousands of dollars within weeks of driving off the lot. A welder from Idaho paid $72,000 for a GMC Sierra Denali and sold it 2 months later for $58,000. That's $14,000 gone just for daring to believe the hype. Multiply that story by 100,000, and you get a picture of what's really happening. The collapse didn't start overnight. It began when the pickup stopped being a tool and became a status symbol. When the working-class buyer, farmers, builders, mechanics, was replaced by city professionals chasing lifestyle and luxury. Automakers flooded the market with chrome, screens, and six-figure price tags, forgetting the simple truth: trucks were never meant to be luxury toys. And when that illusion broke, the buyers vanished. Now, a new threat is accelerating the fall: electric pickups. Sleek, silent, and often half the price. Startups like Slate are offering base models under $20,000. Even Tesla, despite its chaos, has changed consumer psychology forever. The old giants can't compete. Not yet. This isn't just a dip in the market. It's a reckoning. The symbols of American toughness and freedom are being crushed by their own excess. Dealers are slashing prices, adding free options, even chasing customers out of the parking lot. Videos of desperate salesmen are going viral. And the question isn't whether prices will fall, but how far and how fast. While in 2024, the average American household needed to devote more than 40 weeks of income to purchase a full-size truck, up from just 26 weeks in 2010. Dealers still talk about strong demand, yet hundreds of thousands of pickups are sitting unsold across the nation. According to leaked logistics data from 2 major automakers, at least 320,000 brand new trucks are parked in holding lots near Chicago, Dallas, and Atlanta, waiting for buyers who never came. Drone footage circulating on social media shows endless rows of metallic colors baking under the summer sun. Acres of wasted inventory that quietly mark the beginning of a market implosion. The cultural shift was subtle but devastating. When Ford launched the F-150 Platinum Edition, it didn't just sell a truck. It sold a lifestyle. Soon every brand followed. Ram added massaging seats and chrome detailing to appeal to executives. Chevrolet released Midnight and High Country trims aimed squarely at luxury SUV owners. The marketing slogans changed too. Ads no longer spoke to farmers or builders. They spoke to leaders, visionaries, and dreamers. The pickup, once the symbol of blue-collar strength, was now a status object for white-collar comfort. For a while, the strategy worked. Profits soared and Wall Street celebrated record margins. But as the middle class shrank and real wages stagnated, the audience that could afford these six-figure vehicles began to vanish. By late 2023, cracks were visible. Truck loans were defaulting at the highest rate since 2008. The Federal Transportation Bureau reported that nearly 1 in 5 new truck owners were underwater, owing more on their loan than the vehicle was worth. Meanwhile, online forums filled with frustration. "I used to buy a new Silverado every 5 years," wrote a contractor from Ohio. "Now I can't justify it. I'll drive my 2014 until it dies." Multiply that sentiment by millions, and you begin to understand why the lots are full. Even within the industry, insiders started to sound the alarm. A confidential memo from a Detroit-based manufacturer, leaked in early 2025, warned executives that pricing elasticity has reached its limit, and consumer trust in the segment is deteriorating. The memo predicted that by mid-2026, maintaining current price levels would be economically unsustainable. Some analysts believe the message was even bleaker than reported. But the most telling detail isn't on paper, it's in the eyes of the dealers themselves. Visit any major dealership in Texas or Colorado and you'll see the same scene. Brightly lit showrooms empty of customers. Salesmen pacing between gleaming trucks that no one can afford. On weekends, banners scream, "Zero down and no payments for 12 months. Yet the lots remain silent. One dealer in Kansas City admitted anonymously that his team had sold only 4 trucks in all of September, less than a third of normal volume. "People used to walk in with confidence," he said. "Now they just come to look, shake their heads and leave." The reality is hard to ignore. The American pickup, once built for dirt roads and heavy loads, has been priced out of the lives of the very people who made it famous. It's no longer a symbol of freedom or work ethic. It's a financial gamble wrapped in steel and leather. And as manufacturers scramble to justify their prices with cosmetic updates and empty slogans, the buyers who once defined the market are walking away. What remains is an industry bloated by greed, cornered by its own success, and teetering on the edge of collapse. The roots of the pickup truck crisis stretch far deeper than most manufacturers are willing to admit. What's unfolding today isn't just a sudden dip in sales. It's the result of years of systematic mistakes, greed, and denial. The industry built its empire on an illusion that the appetite for large, expensive trucks in America was endless. For more than a decade, executives convinced themselves that if they added more chrome, more luxury, and more power, buyers would keep coming. But the data tells another story. A story of overproduction, shrinking affordability, and a widening disconnect between corporate fantasy and economic reality. At the same time, the industry ignored one of the most critical warning signs. Income growth had flatlined. The average American wage rose only 14% between 2015 and 2024, while truck prices jumped 60%. The math simply didn't work anymore. For many families, buying a new pickup now required the same financing commitment as a small house 20 years ago. Yet automakers continued to inflate prices by padding trucks with features no one asked for. Panoramic roofs, 20-inch wheels, self-parking software, and luxury noise cancellation cabins. These additions allowed them to justify higher sticker prices, but they alienated their traditional base. Farmers, tradesmen, and small business owners, the backbone of the pickup market, could no longer afford the very vehicles designed for their work. Inside the companies, executives dismissed warnings from their own analysts. According to a whistleblower report from an engineer at a major Detroit automaker, several internal forecasts predicted a demand contraction as early as 2022. Those warnings were buried. Instead, the board ordered a 15% increase in production for 2023, claiming it would prepare for post-pandemic growth. That growth never arrived. By 2025, dealers were quietly begging corporate offices to halt shipments, but the response was the same: keep the trucks moving. Another piece of the crisis came from the manufacturer's obsession with profit margins. The average profit on a full-size pickup in 2010 was around $8,000, 0 cents per unit. By 2024, that number had ballooned to more than $18,000, 0 cents. Rather than reinvesting in affordability or innovation, automakers poured the profits into shareholder buybacks, executive bonuses, and aggressive advertising campaigns. When the market began to cool, there was no cushion left. To keep investors calm, companies offered unsustainable discounts and zero-interest loans, effectively erasing their own profits. But perhaps the most damaging factor was psychological. For decades, the pickup truck was marketed as a symbol of strength, reliability, and independence. Buyers didn't just purchase a vehicle, they purchased identity. The moment prices crossed the line of reason, that identity cracked. A $75,000 0-cents work truck didn't feel like freedom anymore, it felt like debt. Consumers started questioning the narrative, comparing options and realizing how little value they were getting for their money. Once that trust was broken, it didn't come back. Meanwhile, automakers found themselves trapped. They couldn't lower prices without angering recent buyers and collapsing used values, yet they couldn't raise them without losing more customers. Some insiders referred to it as the iron trap, a cycle of denial and dependence. Every attempt to fix the problem only deepens it. By the beginning of 2025, analysts from the American Vehicle Council estimated that up to 30% of all pickup production that year would remain unsold by its release quarter. The industry that once defined American mobility is now choking on its own excess. Overproduction, rising costs, and corporate arrogance have collided in a perfect storm. The trucks that once symbolized grit and practicality have become oversized reminders of corporate hubris, monuments to a system that forgot who it was serving. And as those unsold trucks sit rusting in the fields outside Detroit, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The crash wasn't sudden. It was engineered, one short-sighted decision at a time. One of the most notorious strategies was the phantom rebate. Dealers would advertise a $5,000 discount, but bury it behind eligibility clauses almost no one met, like requiring a previous lease from the same manufacturer within a 12-month window. In 2024, a class-action lawsuit in Texas alleged that over 40 dealerships across 5 states had collectively overcharged customers more than $60 million through this practice. Yet none of the major automakers admitted fault. They quietly settled out of court. At the same time, manufacturers began leaning on digital deception. Online configurators showed starting prices that were technically accurate but practically impossible. The base models listed on websites often didn't exist in stock anywhere in the country. You could only buy the $38,000 0-cents truck if you found a dealer willing to order it, and wait 6 months for delivery. Most buyers, frustrated or impatient, left with a $58,000 0-cents mid-tier version instead. The industry's next challenge came not from its customers, but from a new kind of competition: nimble electric startups and ambitious tech-driven brands. For decades, Detroit's Big Three had controlled the market. But suddenly, outsiders were rewriting the rules. The arrival of affordable electric pickups shattered the illusion of scarcity that had propped up traditional prices. Companies like Slate, a California-based startup, promised a fully functional electric truck for under $20,000, 0 cents. It was minimalist, simple, and lacked the luxury fluff of legacy models. But it worked. Early reviews described it as the first truck in 20 years that feels honest. Within a month, Slate claimed to have 40,000 pre-orders, a figure that shook the industry. Established automakers dismissed it publicly, calling it unsustainable, but internal emails leaked later revealed genuine panic. Ford's executive board reportedly held an emergency meeting after the Slate announcement, referring to the company as a potential existential threat. Inside the showrooms, panic turned into performance. Salesmen, once arrogant, became desperate. One viral video from Colorado showed a dealership employee sprinting after a departing customer's car, waving a $5,000 0-cents discount sheet in the air. The clip gathered 3 million views and became a metaphor for the entire industry, chasing the buyer it had driven away. By late 2025, reports surfaced of dealerships offering free add-ons, premium tires, upgraded sound systems, even gas cards, just to finalize a sale. Margins collapsed. A dealer in Ohio told an industry paper that his team now sold trucks for bragging rights, not profit. Another admitted that every unsold truck cost his lot roughly $28.00 a day in insurance and storage, creating a slow financial bleed that couldn't be stopped. Meanwhile, the panic spread upward. Automakers began quietly freezing hiring, delaying new model launches, and cutting advertising budgets. Executives who once bragged about resilient demand started giving cautious interviews filled with phrases like temporary market adjustments. Privately, they were terrified. Some plants in the Midwest shifted to half-capacity operations, though companies disguised this as retooling for electrification. Even those with record profits on paper were masking the reality. Profits were coming from accounting tricks, not real sales. Suppliers, from steel fabricators to software vendors, began reporting delayed payments. The entire supply chain was trembling under the surface, waiting for someone to admit the obvious. The party was over. The cultural backlash grew just as fast. Traditional truck owners, especially in rural America, felt deceived and insulted. "They stopped building trucks for us," said one farmer from Nebraska during a local news interview. "They build them for people who never leave the pavement." Across the Midwest and South, protest gatherings formed in dealership parking lots. Some carried banners reading, "Bring back the work truck" and "No more chrome lies." In certain towns, graffiti began appearing on dealership billboards with a single word, "trap." A few viral clips even showed pickup owners lining their vehicles outside dealerships with signs reading, "Not for sale, not again." What started as individual frustration had turned into collective defiance. The tipping point came when dealers began begging automakers to slow production, and were refused. Executives feared that reducing output would signal weakness to investors, triggering stock declines. But that short-term fear only accelerated the collapse. Trucks continued to pour into already full lots. As inventories ballooned, lenders grew cautious, tightening credit terms. Suddenly, even those willing to buy couldn't get approved. The result was a gridlock of metal and debt. Industry insiders quietly began using a new phrase, the steel bubble. By early 2026, the financial consequences became impossible to hide. The average new truck was sitting on a lot for more than 90 days before sale, triple the turnover rate of 2019. Dealers offered absurd incentives, free home generators, lifetime oil changes, even vacation packages. None of it mattered. Buyers had lost faith. The same customers who once competed to show off their new trucks were now boasting about holding on to old ones. Online communities dedicated to truck minimalism exploded in popularity, teaching people how to restore and maintain older vehicles instead of buying new. The first cracks will appear in the used market. As inventories of new trucks remain unsold, dealers will flood auction lots with vehicles at any price just to clear space. Analysts from the North American Auto Council estimate that by mid-2026, used pickup prices could fall by as much as 30%. Once that happens, new truck values will follow. Manufacturers will be forced to slash prices on current year models by $20,000 to $30,000 to stay competitive. Buyers who paid full price in 2024 or 2025 will find themselves holding vehicles worth half of what they owe. The wave of loan defaults could rival what happened in the subprime mortgage crisis. Lenders are already tightening standards. Some have quietly stopped approving long-term truck loans altogether. At the same time, a quiet revolution will reshape what a pickup even means. Automakers have finally begun developing simplified, low-cost models, vehicles without luxury interiors, without unnecessary tech, designed for real work. Insiders refer to them as reset trucks. Early prototypes of the next generation Ford Ranger, for example, are rumored to start around $29,000, a price point that hasn't existed in nearly a decade. General Motors is testing modular pickup designs that can be shipped flat and assembled locally, reducing production costs by up to 25%. These new models are less about profit and more about survival. It's a return to humility, a forced reset brought on by a decade of excess. Yet even as companies adjust, the cultural damage runs deeper. The public no longer trusts the pickup brand the way it once did. The mythology of the indestructible American truck has cracked. People who once lined up for new models now watch the chaos from afar, waiting for prices to hit rock bottom. Online communities are already circulating leaked dealer data and internal memos, tracking price drops in real time like stock traders. For many, it's no longer about mobility, it's about revenge, about watching the corporations that overcharge them finally sweat. The broader economy won't escape unscathed. Thousands of dealership jobs will vanish, smaller suppliers will fold, and factory towns that depend on truck production will feel the hit hardest. The irony is painful. The vehicles that once symbolized American resilience may become the catalyst for another regional recession. But in the long run, something necessary is happening. The market is cleansing itself of illusion. By late 2026, trucks will finally cost what they should have all along, not as luxury badges, but as tools built for people who actually need them. When the dust settles, the pickup industry will still exist, but it will look very different, leaner, humbler, and permanently changed. The age of the $80,000 0-cents work truck is ending, and with it, the fantasy that bigger and pricier always means better.